Now, please excuse me when I do not sure why Karis is in the middle of us, but um, anybody who ever has followed me online at an event or somewhere has probably seen me in a photo with Pat McGrew. But she is so much more than a photo. She is literally one of the reasons why I am able to do this right now. And I don't want to get all teary about it, but Pat McGrew is one of the people that plucked me out of obscurity and said, you're trying to do something different and reach a different audience, which was the print customers at that time, and help them understand what their that's a odd sound. Um, thank you. And try to trying to do something different. And I am going to help you. I'm going to introduce you to some people. And that's exactly what happened. And it kind of grew from there. And through your mentorship and everything else you've done, which made you the first recipient of the Girls Who Print Girly Award, given out to anybody in the industry. I just can't thank you enough for the years of education and mentorship. And really, I call it 1-800-PAT because you're always there for me. And one of the things that you do many things, which you'll let everybody know. But one of the things you do is you do host Print Sample TV on Inkish TV. And this is a project that's near and dear to my heart because is something wrong? Did I? Okay. Actually, you're muted for some reason.
Because the UPS guy came to the door.
Oh, that was the thing. Okay. I'm so sorry. One of the reasons that the Print Sample TV is so near and dear to my heart is because it is very connected to Project Peacock. Project Peacock, in the sense that it has a mission, which is that the thing that sells print is not the damn press. It's what the press can do. And it just is at the point now where I'm trying to help by showing print customers from brands and agencies and students coming up the physical samples of what can be made from various manufacturers, and you have a different angle. What you're trying to do is help the printers out there develop samples that will help them sell print. So that is what this session is all about. So I'm also going to take myself off the screen and please fill in the blanks about who you are if anybody out there might not know. And thank you again so much for everything, Pat. I honestly would not be here without you. Thank you so much.
Deb, look, we learn from each other and we learn from each other every day, right? We've led each other down some entertaining paths. So as Deborah said, I do have Print Sample TV, which my friend Morton graciously hosts, where there are over 50 episodes of really cool print samples out there, and they're from all over the world. So maybe you're in a part of the world where you think you've seen everything. Head out to Print Sample TV. You'll see things you've never seen before. What I want to do today is I want to help you understand what you can do to be better, right? To create a better customer experience for the people that you're trying to sell to. And really for your whole team, because print samples are part and parcel of a big story. So what I want to leave you with today is maybe a new way of looking at the print samples that you and your team use to tell people what you can do. I think that there are several ways to approach print samples. You may have pre-built kits that you've built. You may just be picking things up off the end of presses. We want to normalize and optimize that customer experience by normalizing and optimizing the print sample experience. So let's talk about what print samples really are meant to be. And I've learned a lot from Deb on this too, because she looks at everything with that print buyer's eye. And I'm looking at things in terms of what a press can actually do and what the finishing equipment that's paired with it can actually do. So by taking those 2 points of view together, that's really what informs this entire presentation. So let's think about what print samples do. What are they intended to do? Well, they're supposed to show your potential customer, or maybe even an existing customer, what you can really do. You know, what substrates can you print on, and how brilliant does it look, and how clean is that print, and how does it feel when you touch it? And, you know, even beyond that, what finishing can I do? What kind of origami folds can I do that'll really create this really great experience for whoever receives the final print? If I've got access to enhancement, which might be some spot varnish, or it might be something like foiling, you know, what does that look like, and what are all the things that a potential customer might be able to do with that because I have it available to me? You know, all of these things, the print sample, you know, it's the leave behind from the conversation, but it's going to live there in the hands of your potential customer a whole lot longer than your voice in their head is going to last. So you want to make sure that that print sample can stand on its own and tell a story. It should be a purpose-built piece. It shouldn't be, sadly, what I hear a lot from people. So one of the questions I ask when I do the day-long or half-day-long version of you know, sort of print sample workshops is, you know, what are you using today? What, you know, what's cool? You know, well, bring something that you're using as a print sample today. And I get a lot of leftover print runs. You know, oh yeah, I picked this up off the back end of the press. You know, it's a pretty cool piece. I thought, you know, other people might like it. Very often people say, oh, well, my vendor gave me this box full of samples, so I'm using that. And I want to cry a little bit because they're lovely samples, but technical samples from your vendor don't show what you can do. They show what the vendor could do in their shop, right? Back in their customer center. Sometimes it's work that was specifically done, complex work, perhaps that was done for a specific customer, it's important to be able to show those kinds of things, but it's so much more important to show the things that you can really do. And sometimes the print sample actually gets created because the customer said, hey, here's a file, can you prove you can print it for me? Okay, well, that's a nice print sample too. But if you think about it, not only is that an opportunity to show maybe several different substrates more than what they asked for, maybe you could apply some unique finishing to it, but maybe that alone shouldn't be the only thing you show them. Maybe you should also be showing them other things. So what we want to do is think about all the different substrates that you have available. We want to think about all of the different capabilities you have available, and that's what should really inform your print sample program. Many people say, oh, well, you know, we just don't have a library of samples, and we, you know, we have a lot of different substrates, but, you know, we don't really keep track of what we've run on those substrates. You know, all the end runs are sitting in a box. We just pick it up. You know, sadly, that is not a print sample program. And if you don't have a print sample program and a print sample strategy, you are simply not doing the best you can do for yourself. So let's talk about what it should look like. You know, it should look like your best possible plan. It should look like dedicated print samples. Show your customer that you know their business and you understand what they do for a living. You've heard some amazing sessions this morning. If you've been with us from the beginning, you've heard some amazing stories of both sort of failures on the part of some people who tried to buy print and had some challenges. But what you've also heard is you've heard some needs and you've heard some really cool solutions. Your print sample plan should include an array of the things that you can do and that you're doing for customers today. But, it should also show things you want to do. And remember that complex pieces that add value are normally sold for a higher margin. And in this world, who doesn't want a higher margin? I want a higher margin. So you need to think about your print samples, not only in terms of the technical expertise that they show, but think about how to tell the story that goes with them. Because stories lead to sales. Karis can tell you about that. Stories lead to sales. Your best plan is to build a good library of print samples. Make sure that you have a dedicated directory, or in your asset management system, a dedicated space for print samples that show specific things, that show great color on different kinds of substrates, that show all of the things that you can do in finishing. Here's the trick. You can't just build it once and walk away. Sadly, what you really have to do is make it part of a cadence, because you've got to revisit these samples over and over and over again. You're going to buy new presses and new finishing, and you're going to get new software in that's going to let you do some really amazing things. Maybe you buy a motion cutter that lets you do really intricate types of cuts. You need samples that show those things. And if you built your print sample program 3 years ago and you haven't touched it since, you might not even have the same press, or you might have new presses that aren't represented by those print samples. That's why you need a print sample strategy, and somebody has to be accountable. Somebody needs to know what samples you've got and all the things you're capable of doing. And then you need to regularly educate everybody who is in the sales supply chain and the marketing supply chain inside your company, right? You need to make sure that not only the feet on the street, the people who are out visiting with customers, know what's going on your production floor and what you're capable of, but you need to make sure that the CSRs are actually educated and they know everything. And if you sell through channels, because I know some printers do, they have big print broker relationships. They have an extended group of people who sell on their behalf. Make sure they know too, because if they don't know what you can do, they cannot possibly go out and sell it. So we want a plan, and we want a plan and a strategy that's going to intrigue your potential customers. Because often when I ask what your print sample strategy is, people say, it's like, print sample strategy? You're supposed to have a strategy? I didn't know I was supposed to have it. I don't have a strategy. If you don't have a print sample strategy, just trying to grab a bunch of print samples together is simply not going to help. I've had salespeople say, oh, well, print samples don't help. They just don't help. Now, customer knows what they want. I give them a price. That's all there is to it. If that's one of your salespeople, it's time for the re-education to start, because every salesperson should be able to go beyond what a customer is asking for. They should be able to drag in a little bit more story, maybe a little bit more intricate finishing, maybe some different substrates to consider, maybe some of the printing could be done multiple ways to do, A, B, C, D, E testing. There are all sorts of things that you can put in front of a customer if you understand their business. I've had salespeople say, well, customers only want to see what they're asking for. And I promise you they don't. Deb's had this experience at the Project Peacocks, where she shows things to people and they've never seen anything like it. They didn't know to ask for it because they didn't know what they didn't know. And it's the job of the salesperson and the marketing team behind them to make sure that you can bring to your potential customers the best possible customer experience by showing them everything that they could be putting in front of their customers. It's not really that hard. It does take time. So what you really have to do is create a sample library. You need to be dedicated to creating pieces that will show off all of the things that you can do. Now, you might be able to start with work that you've done for a customer. I've had clients who've been really successful asking customers, hey, we did this really cool job for you. Would you mind if we, changed a couple of things on it and added our logo to it and some other information I'm going to ask you to add? Would you mind if I did that? And very often customers will say yes. One of the companies that I'm going to talk about towards the end here is a company called Semeta in Belgium. They've been amazingly successful at getting their customers to let them show off the really cool work that they do. And the folks at Semeta figured it out early. They actually put their logo and their contact details on every print sample that they print and that they hand out either at a show or through their sales teams. That's what you should be doing. That is a print sample strategy. Now, when I talk about your print samples, and I mentioned that Semeta was smart enough to put their information on all the samples, there are a lot of pieces that go into building this print sample strategy and library. One is that you have to be able to document and track all your print samples. You need to know what you have. You need to know where it is. And maybe you keep track of it in an Excel spreadsheet or on a Google sheet or in an Airtable. Or maybe you have access to a content management system that allows you to track things that way. One way or another, in the same way that you track all the work that comes in that you do for pay for customers, you need to be treating your print samples in the exact same way. You need to know everything you can possibly know. You need to be able to show images of those print samples as part of it. Oh, thank you for moving the video. So one of the things I'll tell you is this is the hardest part because it's time consuming. It takes time, it takes effort, and somebody has to own it. And my experience has been that no one wants to, but frankly, somebody does have to own it. You need to not only be able to document and track them, but you need to know where they are physically located. Where are they stored? I've heard a few really sad stories from salespeople. I've actually seen this with my own eyes, where all their print samples are in the trunk of their car, or they're in a suitcase that they roll around and use as carry-on luggage. Those samples don't look the same after they've been stored in a trunk or kind of rolled around in a carry-on suitcase. You need to make sure that the samples that the customer ultimately sees, the prospect ultimately sees, is in good shape. The other thing you want to do is tag your samples. I love the Semeta folks because they put their logo on there, they put contact details on there. It's brilliant. I want you to think about what happens when you leave that print sample behind. How is somebody going to get a hold of you? Maybe they've got the business card. Maybe they just have you in their Rolodex, but don't you want the sample to stand on its own? I know I do. So the sample that you're seeing up here on the right is one from Drupa 2016, back when we had Drupas. And one of the things that I loved about that Drupa is I got to actually work on building 135 different print samples. And Deb was actually my color eyes for that adventure. One of the things we did with every print sample is made sure that all of the production information about the sample was available to anybody who picked up one of those samples and walked off with it. We wanted to make sure that they knew what printed it, what vendor was involved, what substrates were involved, because the paper is so important to print. We wanted to specify the press because the vendor I worked for was selling several and we had 2 on the floor. Make sure that the finishing is correctly identified as well. Every one of the samples that you leave with anybody should have all of this information on there somehow, some way. Some people get really creative with how they do this. And you don't have to be horribly creative, but you do have to make sure that it's on there. And remember, it's a print sample. So it's okay to cover up some of the content because the content isn't really what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the overall look, feel, touch, finish. So your information, it's okay if it covers up some of that content. That won't hurt anything. So how do you start? This is not hard. Start with what you know how to do. What equipment do you have on your floor, or what also can you partner? A lot of times for finishing, you can partner for finishing. Maybe for enhancement, you can partner if you don't have it on your floor. Look at what samples you're using today. What do you have that matches which one of those pieces of equipment? What story do you know about those particular print sample pieces? What should you throw out? What no longer applies because you've changed equipment? What is just not the best representation? This is the time to green it all out, right? Go through and edit your print sample collection so that we can identify the gaps. Then start to think about how you treat requests for print samples. Somebody calls you and says, hey, I need a print sample that shows this. And that call might be from your sales guy or from a CSR, right? It might be into production saying, hey, can you run me something that looks like this because I need to show it to somebody. Some companies just do it sort of ad hoc and don't even track the cost of building those samples. Some charge for them, especially if they're complex samples. Some say, well, send me a file, I'll run it on whatever's on the press right now. And some people say they won't actually accommodate a specific print sample request from a customer. I'm not saying any one of these is right or any one of these is wrong, but remember that if a customer or someone serving a customer is asking for a specific kind of print sample and you don't have it and you say no, they might go to the next printer who's willing to put in the work and get it for them. So think about what your strategy is and make sure that everybody knows what the strategy is. Make sure that salespeople know what they can ask for and what they can't ask for. Make sure that the CSRs know what they can ask for and what they can't ask for, right? Make sure that everybody in the supply chain understands what's good and what's not. And then start to look at all the print samples that you have, think about all the requests that you've gotten, and review everything that you do. And take a couple steps back. Because what you might find is that you've been responding to print sample requests for jobs you don't really want to do. We said in an earlier session today, sometimes you have to fire the customer. Sometimes you just don't even want to onboard that customer because sometimes people are asking for things that are so outside what you can actually do that you will turn yourself into a pretzel. Maybe instead you partner with somebody who can do it. Or you just tell the customer, the potential customer, I just can't do that thing. I can do all this other stuff, but I can't do that thing. Remember to set ground rules for your staff so that everybody knows what a print sample plan looks like for your organization, and you'll be in good shape. Because ultimately, you should end up with a portfolio that shows what you can do, the whole range of what you can do. Right? And maybe you can do boxes, right? And maybe you can do boxes that are personalized, and maybe you can do boxes that are personalized with another box inside that's also personalized. Or maybe you can do pieces that are sort of display pieces, right? Maybe you can do things like this. This is from the box maker. By the way, this is from Mercantile Press in Delaware, box maker up in the Northwest. You know, maybe you can do these things. Maybe you can partner if you don't do them directly. Whatever it is you can do, make sure that your whole team knows what you can do. And then make sure that you have a range of portfolios. This is sort of what I call crawl, walk, run. Start by knowing what you have and what you can do and identifying the samples you have. But ultimately, you're going to want a portfolio of samples that can walk a customer through a process. You're going to want a set of samples that show basic things, but then you're going to want to show more advanced things, more advanced substrates, different kinds of enhancement. Make sure that you're thinking about the journey the customer is taking. Make sure you understand all the things the customers you're currently serving might need beyond what they're currently buying from you. because you might be able to get more of their wallet share if you have a program that allows your sales team members to show them all these other things that you can do. It's the best thing you can do to grow your business, right? It's a brilliant thing to do. Show how you can differentiate. Show the different things you can do. For some of the people listening, you might be a transaction printer, and you might be the kind of company that, maybe you've been selling some trans promo. Maybe you have some designers that are on call or in-house. Maybe you haven't thought about how they could also enable you to do different kinds of direct mail marketing, or different kinds of brochure marketing, or church bulletins, or point of sale flyers, right? Think about all the things that you could do to differentiate what you can print, what your equipment can do today. Think about personalization. If you have personalization capabilities, are you making it clear to everyone that you do work for that you have personalization capabilities, or do you expect them to come to you to ask what you can do? You have to go to them, right? It's all about building that loyalty relationship with your customer and making their customer experience so spectacular that when you come with wild and crazy ideas of things you'd like to print for them, they'll listen, because you've been doing well by them. You've been doing right by them. And your print samples, especially the ones that show how you can differentiate, that makes all the difference in the world. Don't be afraid to show the same sample from different pieces of equipment that you might have. Maybe you've got some really great toner devices and great inkjet devices, and maybe you've got some hybrid devices. Show a piece on all of them. Show it on different substrates. Give your potential buyer, your customer, the opportunity to maybe see the stuff they're missing, because they've made decisions based on things that they know and not on the things that they don't know. Because that's your job, right? So let's talk about building the portfolio, right? Who do your salespeople sell to? Who do they talk to? When I do these seminars, I'll have people say, I leave print samples with everybody. I just leave piles everywhere. And other people say, oh no, I never leave print samples. No. Those cost money. We don't do that. And other people tell me they wait for somebody to ask. And all of those answers, I get them. I really do. But in fact, a print sample needs to be part of every salesperson's story. And it needs to be part of what the CSRs know and understand, because sometimes they might hear a customer say something that will trigger an idea that, well, maybe this job you've asked for, we could also, do it this way for you. Everybody in the chain needs to know everything. Now, remember I said that every sample needs a story? And I'm a writer by trade, so I love writing stories. I know Karis is a writer by trade. She tells great stories. And many of you have people on staff who tell great stories. Every one of your samples needs a story. So let me tell you a few stories. And please, feel free to steal it. First story. It's Thunder from Down Under, and no, this isn't one of the acts in Las Vegas. Years ago, a lot of years ago, getting almost on to 2 decades ago, when the very earliest of inkjet equipment was being rolled out, it was hard to find anybody who wanted them. And, print quality was kind of what it was in 2003, 2004. And, we struggled to try and find people who wanted to print that way. But we knew that there was an opportunity there, because we knew there was an opportunity for personalization. And for all those people who wanted to do new and crazy things, but didn't want to do it on their toner devices because they perceived it to be too expensive, we kind of found a niche. And found a really cool company in Australia that was willing to be a guinea pig. And the company was, the loyalty program was called Plus Points, and it was for a pharmacy company. And, they'd actually been using print very effectively. They'd been sending it out in the mail and sending newsletters out. And that top image is kind of what they used to send out. But it used a base stock, and then they kind of post-printed it with toner. And it was cool. but it wasn't fabulous, and it wasn't really targeted to different kinds of buyers. And what they started to understand is that their buyers had a lot of flavors. They had pensioners who were, picking up prescriptions on a regular basis. They had new moms and dads who were picking up all the baby stuff on a regular basis. They had all the people coming in for hair care products as well as other things. And they realized that they had all these segments of people, and maybe they could try talking to them. And so the first piece of it was go to a white paper factory on a big full color inkjet device, and just be able to, eliminate that cost of the base stock. And then ultimately, using information in the CRM systems, be able to target to these different segmented people and to do what they call life cycle targeting. And it created this amazing story. So the customer was delighted. The customer, they changed their frequency. The mail packs changed the way that it got delivered to their end customers. I mean, it was an amazing story for them because they actually improved their business. A loyalty program that had kind of been on life support turned into this massive sales engine for them because they were able to target and customize and really create a great experience for the customers coming into their pharmacy. But the other person who got a really great story out of this was the printer who actually worked with them. It was a combination of their designers working with the customer's marketing company and basically showing them and holding their hand down all the things that could be done. There was a brilliant designer, a woman called Corinne Weiss, who worked with them. The printing company in Australia at the time was called HPA, Hermes Persissa Australia. They've since been bought and acquired a few times. But that team understood how to wrap a story together. So the salespeople had a great story to tell from that point forward. And on the back of this, they sold variable data inkjet printing for years to companies who originally didn't think they had any need for it and weren't really quite sure about the print quality coming off of those early inkjets. But when they started to hear stories of people making money, oh my gosh, those stories resonated. I mentioned Semeta a little bit ago. They're another one with those great stories, not just one, but just dozens and dozens of them. They were the in-house plant for a grocery chain in Belgium. And the Semeta folks are just really, really smart people. And I have always loved working with them. Jo van der Wey, Bart, the whole team, Bruno, the whole team, they're just amazing group of people. And they think differently. They realized when they made a decision that they wanted to move their offset equipment out and replace it with high-speed inkjet in order to be able to do all of the printing that Colruyt wanted to do. Colruyt is very self-sufficient. They even own their own power up in the North Sea. They do everything themselves. And so they wanted to create a new experience. And here's why. Every couple of weeks, they were putting a mailer into the mail stream that was printed offset, and it was massive. Every 2 weeks, 2.1 million customers received a 32-page catalog of coupons. And it was too much. Well, somebody who actually worked there said, yeah, it's just too much. The problem was it wasn't targeted. It wasn't segmented. You're an old age person. The kids have been out of the house forever and you're getting coupons for, diapers and baby formula. It just really wasn't working. So the team at this newly formed entity that rolled out of Colruyt, they took the name Semeta, and their project was to get that 32-page mailer down to something more reasonable and more accessible to the customer to create a better customer experience. And you'll notice I say that a lot because it informs everything that you do in print, right? There is always someone who you want to receive that print and to have a good experience with it. And the result for them was really pretty amazing. They were able to take the 32-page booklet and turn it into 4 pages that are targeted. And they did some really smart targeting, and I could talk about it for hours. If you ever want to hear the story, happy to tell it to you. But they did smart targeting, and it saved it saved them hundreds of thousands of euro in postage costs, paper costs, but it also improved the customer experience, and they began buying more, which was really incredible. And they began using that same style of communication across all of the different ways that Colruyt was communicating. And they created such an amazing experience for the Colruyt customers that Semeta took the same idea to another company called Zeb. And I apologize, Morton, that you're having to keep moving me around the page here, but I wasn't thinking about a little video box when I was building the slides. So Zeb is a jeans store. They brick and mortar store, specializing in, with it fashions for the younger folk. They had this kind of crazy idea. They wanted to do direct mail, but they wanted to do direct mail no one had ever seen before. In steps the Semeta team, who, again, I think the world of, and they created what I believe is the very first ever direct mail newspaper. Now, the scary thing for this is that it was like 10, 13, 14 years ago. And it was a brilliant campaign because they took the loyalty data from the store and they created personalized newspapers for everybody in the loyalty program. So you got a newspaper with your name on it, your city on it, and specialized offers. And the offers, which are the big pictures that you see on the newspapers, were based on the kinds of things you normally bought. So if you never bought a pair of jeans, you weren't going to see a picture for a pair of jeans. But if you always bought jeans, you'd see jeans there. And then the next most expensive pair would also be featured somewhere in the newspaper. And the amount of your discount varied based on how often you shop in the store. I mean, it's really just incredibly cool. And I love this thing. And it went viral on Facebook back before viral was really a thing, because people were holding up the newspaper and taking pictures of themselves and posting it on Facebook to say, I got my own personalized newspaper. Funny thing was, people were taking the newspapers into the store and saying, hey, got my newspaper, but my friend did not get their newspaper. Why didn't they get their newspaper? They didn't get their newspaper. Oh, I'm sorry, they're not in the loyalty program. You have to be in the loyalty program to get the newspaper. They ended up increasing the size of their loyalty program quite a bit. It was really pretty amazing. And just in the early days, they increased it 9%, and it kept on going. And people were using the promotions in the paper. And Zeb doesn't like to kind of lay on their laurels. So they came back and said, hey, okay, now what can you do? We like the newspaper. We did the newspaper for a few years. What else you got? So the next thing was the direct mail magazine. This was not on glossy stock. It was on a basic uncoated stock. It was beautifully done, or it wasn't jet prepared stock, but it was beautifully done, but it was still personalized, targeted. The offers were targeted. They saw higher ticket sales, higher return on that marketing investment. They got more Facebook fans, right? Who doesn't want that? And their customers increased, right? And they were able to update their customer data. Think about it. If you print catalogs, if you print magazines, if you print brochures, you could do these very same things. There is not a lot of magic to this. They never used more than 5 points of personalized data. There was no really deep diving. It was actually pretty easy for them to do, because the name and the location, where they lived, were two of the most important pieces. You can use the same idea to sell insurance. This was Etheus Insurance, an online broker of insurance, who wanted to get people into their online offices because they knew that if they bought online, they might not stay loyal. But if they met the local people, they might be more inclined to renew the insurance contract when it came up. And it worked, right? It was absolutely brilliant. So remember, I said that we believe that Zeb's direct mail newspaper was the first direct mail newspaper that was in the market, certainly across Europe. That idea was actually springing up in several places at the same time. And a company out of Italy called CSQ had an idea to use their press to do more than just print newspapers, but to create more targeted and lifestyle oriented titles that they could sell advertising for, because they could sell all the advertising. They had the staff to do it. They gave their salespeople an opportunity to sell dedicated newspapers to go with events. And if we ever have events again, you might think about this. And think about, this was all done on newsprint, but this exact same idea would go for pretty much any of the mid-range substrates. You could create the exact same kind of program, but they all have stories. And that's the most important thing. They have stories, and these stories are so important. Every one of the things that you see here is a piece that is real, right? Church bulletins, catalogs, direct mail to get you to buy a Polaris snow machine. All of these things are incredible opportunities, and you can do them too, right? There is no reason that you can't create some print samples that show off the best that you can be. If you're doing catalogs, you know that you could help your customer by helping them target their catalogs. And if you don't know how to do it, there's a ton of people who can help, but you could create net new products. The people who did that Richardson catalog, top right, they're a company in France. And one of the coolest stories I ever heard from them is that they had a customer for whom they did a tailoring catalog. It was, they sent the catalog out to people who bought dress shirts for work, for business, men and women, ties, and sort of all the accessories. They didn't actually sell suits, but they did all the other stuff. And the magazine or the catalog, it would get mailed out to this really very large mailing list. But they were finding that the customer was finding that the sales just weren't really there, not in the way that they wanted them to be. So the customer, the owner of the printing company said, hey, we have this idea. What if we take a look at your customer database and we figure out who's buying what? And maybe based on that, we make a smaller catalog. So think about this. This is a printer saying, we want to print less pages for you. We're going to charge it the same because you're going to see a higher ROI. Now, in some cases, printers actually offer to do a discount for their first run and share in the ROI, and it almost always comes through, and it's almost always beneficial for them to do it that way. In this case, they sent it out where women who had never bought a man's shirt in their life no longer got a catalog full of men's shirts, and men who had never bought a tie didn't get a tie, or maybe they only had one image of a tie, not pages and pages of ties. They did the same thing for dog, for pet supplies. If you never bought a cat thing in your life, they took those out of the version of the catalog you got. You got all the dog stuff. There are so many ways that you can create these really amazing experiences. The church bulletins are an amazing opportunity. There are companies that do nothing but church bulletins, and I love their print samples because everyone is a different design. Everyone is different. They're just absolutely brilliant. So if you have heard nothing from me in this time together, what I hope you heard is that you have an opportunity to create a print sample program that will help your teams sell more stuff to more people for a better price. And that's the most important part. Make sure that you have a story to go with every one of the samples that you create. It doesn't have to be a real story. It can be an aspirational story. When we were first looking at the direct mail newspapers and trying to figure out, how that was all going to come together, we were guessing our way through that conversation a lot. We were lucky, it worked out. Think about all the things that you can print and what stories you might tell. I bet you have a lot of them. And I bet you have some really great stories from samples and from some work that you've done in the past. This would be a really amazingly good time to leverage that. So that's the story that I came to tell. I hope you took something from it. I'll do one quick share of my commercial because I believe in best practices and I believe you should too. So, Deb, Morton, I think that tells the whole story. And I hope people got something from it.